Welcome back to IGN's History of Awesome, a year-by-year breakdown of big events that shape pop culture. In 2014, Halo creator Bungie finally released the highly anticipated MMO shooter hybrid Destiny, and South Park: The Stick of Truth reminded us that games can be really, really funny. Over in Movie Land, Guardians of the Galaxy showed us the sillier side of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and True Detective dazzled and terrified audiences everywhere on the small screen. There's a lot to talk about, so take it away, guys.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the History of Awesome. We're talking about 2014 this year. I'm your host, Justin Davis. I'm here with Eric Goldman, Marty Sleva, and Brian Altano.
Hard to believe it's been a whole year.
Yeah, how are we going to remember this one? This is going to be tough.
We're all wearing, you came back a week later wearing the same shirt and everything.
That's right. Amazing, right? I only have one shirt, so it helps.
When we started History of Awesome, it was really easy looking back at the 70s, 80s, and 90s to say, obviously, we're going to talk about Star Wars, Indiana Jones, all this awesome stuff. And as we got closer and closer to the modern day, it actually becomes kind of more challenging to sort of know what are the most awesome video games and movies and just the most influential, just pop culture things that happened that year. But, we did narrow it down to 10 or 11 things that we think are really awesome, we think will stand the test of time. First up, in the world of video games and actually crossing over into other entertainment, is South Park: The Stick of Truth. This game was a gigantic surprise, I think. In hindsight, yeah, Matt and Trey were deeply involved. They wrote the scripts. Of course it's going to be funny, but man, it could have turned out not nearly as good as it did.
Yeah, and it almost did. It was one of the games that was pulled from the wreckage of THQ. Like this and Evolve are really the two games that, Ubisoft, after THQ went under, Ubisoft sort of picked up the ball and helped fund the sort of the last bit of it. And yeah, it got delayed a bunch, and people were like, is this going to be a good RPG? Like, everyone knew it was going to be funny, but no one was sure if it would be a good game. And when it turned out it was, that was like the most surprising thing of the year.
Yeah, it's like, in a lot of ways, it's my favorite season of South Park. Yeah. Because it's the one that you can play, and it works both as sort of a greatest hits mixtape of all the cool stuff they've done in the show, but also this amazing standalone game that services me as a old man that doesn't have time for a 100-hour RPG, but wants that experience boiled down to like 12 hours, 15 hours. Some of the boss fights are just, you fight, I don't even know if I can say.
You can say.
Can I say?
Yeah.
You fight an aborted Kardashian fetus.
It sounds like South Park.
I don't know how many of those words have to get censored, but that's in there, and it's like all the voice acting's right. It's right on target.
We'll just censor Kardashian. The rest is
yeah, it'll just be a lot of beeps. Just put a bunch of things over my mouth.
There's so many. We could do a history of bad video games based on TV shows and movies. And so, yeah, having Matt and Trey involved was obviously crucial. And they're so, I love them, I'm big fans of them. They're also prickly guys, and they're very specific guys. But that's great, because you know that they wanted to make sure this game was good and lived up to what the fans wanted, and thankfully it very much did.
Well, and there's a history, and they talked about this in interviews a little bit, a history of just very bad South Park games.
Oh, the first-person shooter for N64.
Kind of notoriously. And so they said, no, look, we're going to be deeply involved. We're going to get Obsidian involved. They done Fallout New Vegas, would go on to do Pillars of Eternity, a really, really top-tier developer. And this crazy connection of, TV talent and video game talent making just an awesome video game.
It was really, I think the thing I liked most about its RPG sensibilities are I appreciate 100-hour Witcher or Fallout, I just don't have the time to do that.
Sure.
And so it was the brevity, along with the fact that it played a lot like a 16-bit RPG. It played like Mario RPG, and I loved that.
I liked that, I don't know how many seasons South Park's been on, many.
It's around 18?
Yeah. So, but even though it's been on that many years, they never actually mapped out South Park. Like, where specifically does Kyle live in relation to Cartman? And being able to run around the town, and they had to do it, like Matt and Trey had to sit down and plan it out. Like, here's where the shitty walk is, and here's where all the kids' houses are, and I almost like that more than any of the individual jokes, like that just attention to detail of the town.
It was really cool to get to experience that for the first time, to kind of just be like, what is this town we've been watching for 18 seasons, what does it look like all laid out? I think that in terms of nailing the source material, and obviously you're working with something that's aesthetically pretty simple compared to something else, but I don't think there's a video game that's done that better. Like, I had times where people would walk in and see me playing that game, and they'd be like, it looks like you're watching the show. And you couldn't actually tell you were controlling something.
It looks just like an episode of the show. There were other interesting video games that came out that year in 2014. Destiny is probably one of the most notable. It's interesting. Destiny is probably a candidate for the most improved game ever.
Yeah.
When it came out, I mean, the year that we're talking about now, 2014, was kind of shaky for that game. But Bungie, top tier, arguably one of the most talented game developers ever. They stuck with it. They listened to fan feedback. They incorporated it into their sort of DLC plan. And now Destiny is, in my opinion, a fantastic turnaround story. But it was always a commercial success, right? From the start.
Right from the get-go. And it was, I mean, they had so many question marks surrounding it, like what is Bungie going to do? What's life after Halo? Like what's after life with Microsoft? And, they've said time and time again that Destiny, that the success of Destiny is one-to-one the success of Bungie. Like if Destiny fails, Bungie fails.
Yeah.
And they're like, this is a platform, this is a decade-long project. Like
no pressure.
Like, yeah, we're going all in on this. And yeah, like you said, it came out and sold really well, but it came out and everyone was like, this is fine. This is good.
Yeah. Had some story issues, had a few issues like that, and they really stuck with it. Like I commend them for that. I guess they didn't really have a choice.
Yeah, but I mean, cut to literally just a little over a year later, and the Taken King comes out, and everyone in this office is playing it. Like everyone is obsessed with it, and they're finally nailing the story. They're finally nailing the raids. They're finally sort of delivering the promises that they made originally. And I mean, going forward, that's like Destiny is one of the hottest games on IGN.
Yeah, I mean there are, and it's who knows. It's sort of fuzzy math on Activision's part, but they say 25 million Destiny accounts.
Yeah.
So, however you want to slice that, or however many people that is, or copies sold, it's an overwhelming commercial success, becoming more of a critical success. What's really interesting to me about Destiny is that it's the model or the prototype for what gaming is in 2015. Like it's always online. It's got deeply sort of meaningful, baked-in social features and functions. They're not sort of tacked on or extraneous. They're core to the experience. Sort of a deep and engaging loot system that keeps you coming back for more. Like all these sort of systems.
Nolan North.
and Nolan North.
Yeah.
So it sort of combines everything that gaming is kind of about in 2015, and it was very ahead of its time in that sense.
A year ahead.
Yeah.
At least 1 year ahead of its time. That's really good. We also had sort of on the opposite end of the spectrum from the big giant AAA multi-million or billion-dollar game was Hearthstone.
Yeah.
Tiny team at Blizzard released this tiny kind of experimental game and just like laid it brick by brick by brick and turned it into sort of this big giant video game empire too.
Yeah, probably the most successful non-physical card game of all time, except for Solitaire.
Well,
yeah,
got me through so many classes.
Except for that one that comes with everything for centuries.
I mean, I'm a big fan of Magic the Gathering, but there's no denying that game is incredibly complex and complicated and has strange, weird rules interactions with the timings and interrupts and instants and all of that. And Hearthstone really sort of strips away all of that, but still keeps sort of the complexity and the strategy and the tactics that are important. So it really is like the best of both worlds where anyone can, if you download Hearthstone, like the tutorial is nice and smooth and easy. And like I genuinely believe that anyone can understand it, but even someone coming from like a complex card game background, like I get like a deeper level of enjoyment out of it.
And I don't know why I'm still surprised, but I'm always surprised when Blizzard, I'm like, oh, Blizzard can't do a card game, and it comes out and it's good. And then like with Overwatch, I'm like, oh, Blizzard can't do a shooter. And then it's awesome. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to just stop saying that they can't do this.
It's another game that's a gigantic success. There are 40 million Hearthstone accounts now. That number kind of keeps creeping upward. It's a great example of sort of how to do free-to-play right. If you're a free player, you're going to get a pack of cards every day or every other day, and you're still going to get this trickle of nice content. If you want to pay, you'll get nicer, better cards faster, but you don't ever feel like you need to. I sort of give them money a couple times a year just because I'm really enjoying the game, and I feel like that's kind of how.
Very charitable.
Yes.
Yeah, well, Activision Blizzard, if it's one company that really needs it. No, and Hearthstone, like Destiny, I think made it on this history of awesome in 2014, just because it sort of represents the direction that gaming's going. Like everyone's really scared of free to play, and sometimes it's not done very well. But if you're thoughtful about it and take care of your customers, they'll take care of you, and you can have this product like this platform that can last for hopefully a decade or more.
You know what? This is a weird tangent. Remember Flappy Bird?
Yeah.
I forgot about that game. I don't know. That was a mean game.
No one knows.
Remember that'll be on History of Awful.
Yeah, man. Well, I don't know. The story behind its creator was so sort of sad and weird.
Yeah, well, he has a lot of money.
He's doing all right.
He's funny.
Yeah.
Brian, the 2014 was also interesting because it's sort of the one and hopefully maybe only, but hopefully not year that the Wii U had a good year or a great year.
Yeah.
We had Smash, Bayonetta, and Mario Kart.
Yeah, I mean, great, gorgeous, original games, basically exclusive to the Nintendo console. It kind of felt like that year was going to be what all of the next few years were going to lead into, and obviously that didn't happen this year, and it doesn't look like it's happening next year. Maybe we'll see with Zelda and stuff like that. But yeah, Mario Kart was definitely one of those games that proved that you didn't need the best graphics in the world if you had really awesome art direction.
And but it is gorgeous. I mean, it is gorgeous.
An incredibly gorgeous game, and I think a lot of that is because of the art style that they went with, which is fun and bright and colorful. And I think it's if we did this video series 10 years from now and we look back at this year again, I think Mario Kart would still look gorgeous.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a lot of those classic Nintendo games. They are timeless.
Yeah,
like you can go back and play these Super Nintendo games, and they are just as good as they were back in the '90s. Yeah, and with Kart and Smash too, it proved that Nintendo is still sort of the flag bearer of local co-op and local like competitive, like, and being able to, like, I remember hooking it up in the theater here and we were playing Mario Kart all the time, or playing 8-player Smash at someone's house.
We played a lot of 8-player Smash.
Yeah, and it was just great, and it's yeah, I mean, it's a shame that we don't get more of those, but it was that year where I'm like, all right, I'm totally fine that I bought a Wii U, and I realized I'm probably gonna buy this thing for 10 games over the course of 4 years, but 3 of them come out this year.
Yeah, Nintendo always leans on obviously familiar franchises, but they do it so well.
Yeah.
And it's like, I hadn't played the Wii U until Smash. Like, I was like, oh, okay, I want to check this out.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they don't annualize them; they take their time. Like Mario Kart 8 is very different feeling than 7, and each Smash is very different than the one before it. So it sort of feels like, and that pays off. I mean, even though the Wii U console isn't a big success, Mario Kart, I was really surprised to read, sold 6 million copies. Mario Kart 8.
Yeah.
It's the best-selling Wii U game.
Oh, interesting.
Which is a great attach rate for people with the console.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible.
There isn't a ton else to buy, but that's a great game. And what I really do enjoy about that is they took it kind of in the same direction they did with Smash Brothers, where it became this celebration of all things Nintendo. Like, you had Animal Crossing stuff in it, you had Zelda stuff in it, you had like Mii characters and stuff. All of a sudden, it just became like you were driving through Hyrule and some of the DLC, which like. The DLC that they both gave away and sold was, like a third of the size of the game. There's just so much cool stuff.
Yeah. 2014 and into this year, 2015, has really been the year that I sort of trust Nintendo to get DLC right.
Yeah.
It's a new-ish thing for them. Microsoft and Sony have been doing it for about a decade. Nintendo's still kind of finding their feet, but like the Mario Kart DLC was very extensive, more so than I expected. They're still announcing and releasing new Smash characters. There's over 50 Cloud Strifes coming sometime next year.
Can we talk about the elephant in the room? Your amiibo addiction?
I don't. Is that what history of awesome
That's what actually this is all led up to.
Admitting it was a problem.
Yeah, that was. I associate the launch of Smash with the first wave of amiibo. That you got a whole lot of amiibo on your desk. Your daughter.
Look at this guy.
Yeah, let's focus on you here.
You have a daughter. You should focus on college.
I don't have a daughter.
I'll sell. I'm saving. Well, I'll sell. I can sell them anytime, and then we'll pay for a
Stop
college.
at any time.
I can stop at any moment.
Yeah.
But no, I mean,
Amiibo is really smart, though, right?
Yes, 100%. And it's what Nintendo, like, if you look back in the Wii U era, that's the one thing Nintendo, you're like, yep, well, you got that right.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Well, and they really, like, Skylanders makes $1 billion for Activision every year. Disney Infinity obviously has Star Wars and all those Disney franchises. And Nintendo is sort of mounting a credible challenge in that Toys to Life category. And it's arguably winning in some ways, even though there's no like dedicated amiibo game. Yeah. I mean, it's great to see them. Nintendo's roots as a toy company.
Yeah.
And became a video game company over the last 30 years or so, like a relatively short period of time. Like to see them bring back some of that toy influence and that physical, physical goods is really.
I think it helped too because for so long there wasn't really dedicated Nintendo toys. Like there weren't action figures. There was a couple like you have like those weird Zelda ones on your desk. They're just kind of wonky looking. Yeah. Jack Specifics does some stuff with them every now and then. But in terms of making high quality figurines, this was the first time they'd really done anything like that.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about them going after Smash Brothers was it allowed them to make characters like really deep cut things like the Duck Hunt dog and Rob the Robot and stuff that like I didn't have on my desk before that.
Yeah, like Andrew Goldfarb, a gigantic Earthbound fan. Like the Lucas amiibo figurine is the only official Lucas anything that there's kind of ever
in
been.
the US. Yeah.
So for Game & Watch and stuff
Game
to get
&
a
Watch,
figure as a side effect of being in Smash is really cool.
Yeah.
There were a lot of other interesting video games that year, but it was too big of a year for movies and TV to not sort of dive into some of that. Eric, we're obviously going to talk about the Marvel Marvel had a great year in 2014.
Yeah.
But before we jump into that, the Lego Movie was, I mean, I don't know if it was a surprise to you. It was certainly a surprise to me.
It was a surprise. It kind of shouldn't be a surprise because what we learned with the Lego Movie is always trust in Lord and Miller. I mean, these are the guys who did Jump. These guys keep taking projects that sound crappy when you hear about them, and you sound like, don't do that. And then they're like, oh, actually, we're going to make a great movie. I'm trying not to say awesome, talking about this movie too much, but for double reasons, I guess. So the Lego Movie going in, you had to be cynical because it's a freaking Lego movie.
And it's Warner Brothers Animation, who did good stuff decades ago, but it's really like DreamWorks and Disney, right? They're the people that dominate that scene, and now suddenly there's like a third player, so that's kind of interesting too.
Yeah, no, they definitely made a big statement with that film. We'll see. They're franchising the hell out of it. They've got multiple Lego movies coming. But yeah, I mean, I think that the fact that it was so clever, had a really interesting story. I mean, that's the main thing, again, about Lord and Miller, how they take these ideas that could be so terrible. There's such a bad Lego movie in an alternate Earth. You know?
Totally. And also, it's that, like, no, there shouldn't be a movie with Gandalf and Batman. Like, what is happening? How are these characters in the same movie? And then when it just works. And it has that, testament to the screenplay is that it has that Pixar magic of a 5-year-old is going to laugh at one thing, and then we are going to laugh at something completely different.
Which I think we experienced in seeing it in theaters, right? Was like watching the room react at different times. What I really enjoy about that movie is how, I mean, it is grandiose in its scale and obviously in its licenses and stuff like that, but it also does get down to the tiny, small elements that make Lego amazing, like the unicorn character, which is just clearly cobbled together. Clearly cobbled together from stuff at the bottom of the box, right? But turns into one of the most iconic and memorable characters in the film, just sort of out of this childlike haphazard that it takes to create something like that.
I like that combination of, kids are going to laugh at the silly jokes and stuff like that, but then adults, the traveling from world to world is an excuse to make the movie a giant nostalgia trip, like by looking at the old Wild West play sets and the old play sets that people our age probably played a little bit more with growing up. It's this really smart combination of nostalgia that works on kind of every level. I kind of want to spend a minute talking about the casting as well. I mean, Chris Pratt had such a great year in 2020.
I mean, this is when he went from, oh, you're the dude from Parks and Rec and the guy who killed Bin Laden in Zero Dark 30.
Spoilers.
To like, oh my God, wait, no, you are like AAA talent.
This became king of the franchise, Chris Pratt, because again, he will have multiple sequels to this and Guardians and Jurassic. And this kind of really
he's playing Chewbacca in the new Star Wars movie.
Wow.
He's in Zero Dark 40.
And the Millennium Falcon.
He's amazing.
Not true. But we did have like Elizabeth Banks was funny. Will Arnett was really funny. Liam Neeson, Morgan Freeman.
Alison Brie has the aforementioned Unikitty.
It was great. Just a great cast in that film.
And Will Ferrell.
That's right. So I mean,
that was such a weird moment.
Let's talk about that for a minute too. Yeah, I mean, spoilers, please. If you haven't seen the movie yet, I do want to talk about the ending or sort of the final act, I guess you would call it. I thought that was so. That's what made the movie really special to me. Was sort of that there's a whole live action portion of this movie you don't know exists. Just absolutely great.
Super bold. Just completely taking a left turn you don't expect. Again, I think a testament to the guys making it that they would even go there and really have thought out this story and have it work on two levels, very much work on two levels.
And I like what Will Ferrell did there. Love him, even if you're not wild about his brand of comedy or Will Ferrell being Will Ferrell, like he was put to great use in this particular film and sort of playing a character and dialing back that sort of zaniness to really in service of the story was really effective. I thought. Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh yeah! Speaking of Mr. Chris Pratt.
Yeah, right. Talk about that being his year. James Gunn. I love that we live in a world where the director of Slither gets to make just a huge $200 million Marvel film that's an overwhelming critical and commercial success.
I know a lot of people who say this is their favorite Marvel movie. Especially, I would say people who aren't like big Marvel fans. Like both my parents loved this movie. And it's so fun. And it really was kind of crazy. If you look at James Gunn's resume, I mean, I know he was kind of a writer for hire on Scooby-Doo movies and stuff, but his stuff he directed, it's out super. You can't get more extreme. But just taking these really strange characters and a director who's a very offbeat choice and just completely nailing every aspect. That was amazing.
Yeah, this was that, like, I'll be perfectly honest, when this movie was coming out, I'm like, this is going to be where the bubble bursts. Like, this is going to be the movie that comes out, and it's like, all right, everyone pump the brakes on these Marvel movies.
It's either the jump the shark moment or the moment that Marvel just,
and I'm like, okay, this is going to be it. And then because I don't know, but most people did not grow up reading Guardians of the Galaxy. Like, I know a lot of people who read Iron Man and Hulk and that stuff, but, like, no one really knew what this was all about. And I went to the theater super incredulous, and I'm like, this is possibly my favorite thing Marvel's ever done. Yeah.
I mean, it really, love or hate the Marvel Cinematic Universe, what I like about Guardians of the Galaxy is it gives Marvel so much freedom to, like, if people are getting tired of, all the stuff happening on Earth, we got this whole other thing going on, and, like, this whole other set of stories, and, like, the universe doesn't need to be, like, little winky nods. Like, they can do completely other stories, with other awesome characters. It also showed sort of the strength of the Marvel brand. Like, people are willing to give them a chance.
Yeah.
Like, the movie is awesome, but you wouldn't know it was awesome, before you sort of sat down in the theater, with a raccoon and a talking tree and all that stuff. Like, and then if you put your trust in Marvel,
I like that you sat down in a theater which also had a raccoon and a talking tree.
Sure, yeah.
I like to watch movies with raccoons. Going into this also, you have to remember that unlike Avengers, they didn't have the benefit of multiple movies to introduce these characters.
Right. Yeah.
So it was just a bunch of new characters who are also very outlandish, like the tree and the raccoon, and yet we love them. Like, people love the characters. I think that was a huge testament to the success of the film, was people liked them and found them funny, and I know that's why I know people who saw this movie multiple times.
Right. Yeah. It's got a lot of heart. I attribute a lot of that. Obviously, a lot of that's in the script. But again, like the Lego Movie, the casting here with Batista and just choices
Zoe
that
Saldana.
in hindsight makes sense. But again, up front, you're sort of like, all right, I don't know, this sounds a little strange. Bradley Cooper turned in a great performance.
I think there was something. What was special about it was a sort of escapism you got for going to this fantasy world for this film, which got you away from these sort of like terror-ridden major metropolitan North American cities that most of the rest of these movies take place in. Like, those are fun sort of romps, through downtown New York or whatever it is. But a lot of them are sort of like these things come in and these big brawny guys fight all these things and these buildings fall down and everyone's okay at the end. But this was just like, wait, where are we? We're on this weird planet and this guy's like, he's sleeping around with all these different aliens, but he's not calling him back. Like, what? Who is this guy? He's a scumbag, but I love him. He has this Han Solo thing going on. Like, it's really cool.
And we have to talk about the opening credits, because that's when the movie had me. The second that song kicks on, he starts dancing in the middle of this desolate alien landscape. It's like, you have me. You have me, because this is not like anything I've sort of a normal movie. It doesn't go by the rhythms you're expecting, but it's so fun.
The soundtrack in general is just phenomenal. And it's the way they even positioned it to be a mixtape. On this Walkman that somehow never really runs out of batteries or whatever. We don't ask.
Space batteries, man.
We don't worry about that.
Kree batteries are great.
There you go. It's also, we talked about this in the 2011 episode with Thor and with the first Captain America movie, where it just keeps proving that the Marvel Cinematic Universe can be any genre it wants. Like, we can have a horror movie, we can have a straight up comedy. Like, it doesn't. There's no rules anymore. Like, you can do whatever you want in this universe. Yeah, totally.
And if you take your time, not every Marvel movie is amazing, but if you take your time and you're thoughtful about your characters and your design, like, I really love the designs in this film. If you look at any frame of it, it's distinct from everything else that Marvel has ever done.
Because there's a raccoon in it.
But even Ronan is kind of a weak villain, but he looks so damn cool.
So, if you take your time, audiences will respond. And again, sort of like we talked about, with Destiny and Hearthstone, like, if you take care of your audience, they'll sort of take care of you in turn. Again, another sort of big Marvel success story in 2014 was Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Again, another genre film, which is really interesting.
Yeah, totally. This feels like a Cold War thriller. Like, this is not a it's a superhero movie, but it's not really a superhero movie, which is what I love about it.
Yeah, I love Joss Whedon, but he's not the most cinematic director. And Winter Soldier, which I think is my favorite still of the Marvel movies, it just, it has this vibe that's really cool because it's using characters that have now been established in several movies, but changing even the visual style of it, the tone of it. It just feels different from the get-go and has it really cool. It stands out on its own. Even though it's another Captain America movie, you still feel instantly like, no, there's something else going on here.
I mean, Anthony and Joe Russo, the directors, who are actually sort of the keepers of the MCU, now going to be directing Civil War and Infinity War Part 1 and 2. And they really proved with Winter Soldier, like, man, these guys directed Arrested Development. Like, that's
they did the paintball episodes of Community. Yeah,
like, it's insane. And then, but, you know, Marvel took a chance. It paid off. It's great.
Going in, remember, people were very cynical about that. They're like, oh, these sitcom directors are going to do it. But those two shows you mentioned specifically, Arrested and Community, which they were like frequent directors on, they're pretty cinematic for half-hour comedies. Actually, Community would go into sort of crazy places,
genre episodes.
And so they completely did with Winter Soldier. They weren't just like, oh yeah, it'll be another superhero movie. And it is funny that we went from people being like those guys to now, they're
those guys.
The Russos, bring it back.
I actually like The Winter Soldier was the first time I've seen a Marvel movie really prove that their willingness to just completely upend their universe. Like, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is not like a wink and a nod to like, oh, there's this vibranium, we're going to mention vibranium, all the movies are connected. Like, nah, man, like, there are consequences and like things are different after that movie comes out. That's really cool, I think. It's brave. Like, it kind of feels like that's hard to sustain over decades, but I mean, so far so good.
Yeah, it was cool how they did everything with the shield reveal and whatnot, and then also just taking Cap as a character, because again, you know, we talked about in the 2011 episode, he can be a tricky character on his surface because you're like, oh, he's just Captain America. He does the right thing. So you have to kind of figure out something to bounce off him that makes him react in an interesting way, and I think this movie does a great job by having him, you know, dealing with the fact that he's a man out of time, but not in a silly way, not in a like, what's this do? But be like, he kind of sticks to a code that these guys aren't playing by anymore. And how does that work with him? I think that was really cool.
A lot of people have always assumed he was a very one-dimensional character. He's kind of treated like Marvel's Superman in that he's this like brave, patriotic,
goody two-shoes.
And then bullets bouncing off of him, everything's okay. But he's kind of dumb because he doesn't remember some stuff because he wasn't here for that time. Either he was in space or he was in a Frozen. But the way they handle his character in these films is very smart. Like, he actually becomes very likable and flawed, and you worry about him in times. It's not just like he's unstoppable. So I'm really excited to see where they keep going with these movies.
Well, actually, like, I like Captain America's power level, I guess. Like, he's not invincible, and so I feel like they strike a really good balance between him being a superhero but not just being some man that I don't feel like anything.
And that fight scene with him and Bucky, I was going to say that's another great one. I was going to say the one on the bridge next to the van. How quick it's moving, Bucky pulling out the multiple knives. I mean, it was just, that was a really exciting sequence that proved the thing about Winter Soldier was it was coming after Cap and Iron Man movies, and it scaled down. I mean, it's still a movie with giant helicarrier battle, but a lot of it is very sort of practical effects, card chases, just two guys fighting who don't have superpowers or just have a bionic arm. And it really, but it shows you how big the stakes can be when you're invested in the character.
I think the last thing that really jumps out at me at Winter Soldier, and I don't want to give it too much credit because it is a silly comic book movie, but it deals with
all the credit.
It deals with like real themes of like surveillance and the price of freedom and loyalty and, you know, when it's earned and not earned, and that's not stuff that you necessarily expect to see in a movie like this.
No, totally. I mean, that's Marvel, the MCU, and then even with stuff like Jessica Jones has done a really great job of having Iron Man 3 deal with PTSD, and having like Jessica Jones deal with rape, like in really like adult and like smart ways. Just continue to be impressed by these movies.
I mean, I mean, 2014 is the year that I think the MCU. 2011 was the year it was established. It's like, yo, all our movies are going to be connected. This is a thing. It's really happening. And 2014 is the year that I got on board with. All right, like I'm on board with you, Marvel.
Yeah,
like,
I'm no longer incredulous when I look at that slate of like 45 movies coming out in the next decade.
I don't know what an Inhuman is, but you know, I'm on board to find out in 5 years. The last sort of notable or especially sort of big interesting movie of 2014 that we're going to talk about was Dawn of the Planet of the Apes.
You know, coming off of...
there's the monkeys are behind us. That's our city. You got that. Get out that bridge.
Coming off of, you know, a reboot a couple years before that, again, was one that people didn't quite know what to make of going into, but I think was very well received. But it was one of those things where it was like, it was a good movie and people liked it, but then the sequel really built on it and went in some daring directions. Just dropping Franco and really any human connection to that first movie was something that I don't think a lot of franchises would have done. But it completely worked here.
Certainly a non-traditional sequel, I would say. You know, my expectation was different than what the reality ended up being, and in the best way possible.
Which is weird because a non-traditional sequel is kind of traditional for Planet of the Apes.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true.
Like their original, what was it, 5 movie run?
Yeah.
Is so weird and all over the place and spans so much different space and time. Like sometimes it's underground, sometimes it's more in the future where the apes have taken over everything and they run governments and stuff like that and they wear real clothes. But we, by no means should this franchise have been great again because we saw what Tim Burton did with it in the 90s, which was a huge disappointment for me because I love Planet of the Apes and I love Tim Burton. Those two things coming together.
That's the least Tim Burton movie there is, by the way.
It's right. Like there's a few of the sets peek through here and there.
He kisses that monkey at the end.
I know, it's very odd.
There's nothing wrong with that.
We're gonna let that sit right there.
That'll be a whole other conversation.
But Dawn of the Planet of the Apes is a gorgeous, phenomenal movie, and you're so right in that it's daring and taking some of all the stuff, all of the kind of human hope elements that were in the first movie, and pushing them off to the sides, and kind of relegating humans to be more kind of evil terrorist people who are trying to stop these guys these apes that live in Muir Woods, like right north from here.
It's also like I remember the person I saw it with. She leaned over and at one point she's like, "Are those monkeys like real?" And I'm like, "I don't know." I'm like, this movie, like the CG looks. I don't even know. Is it CG? Are they real monkeys?
It is CG.
Is Caesar actually talking?
They trained a bunch of monkeys to shoot guns.
Yeah,
it's amazing because the whole opening we spend so much time with them, and Andy Serkis had rightfully been acclaimed for many years with what he's been doing, but this movie was another sort of big. We should maybe give this guy an Oscar nomination, along with the confusion of the fact that he's giving a legitimately amazing performance matched with amazing special effects.
Yes.
So there's so many people involved in creating this character you're completely invested in.
Yeah,
sort of like the best films and the best games that bring you to that level of escapism and fantasy are the ones where you never really second guess them.
Yeah.
They're just operating in the background. Like the games that have the best cameras in them and stuff like that. The way the special effects worked in this film, you never once said, "Oh, that's not believable. I don't buy that." You just 5 minutes in, you were hooked. You were in this universe.
I did realize that the monkeys weren't real though because I walked by one of the days they were filming on Columbus in North Beach, and I saw just a side street, and I'm like, "Oh, that's weird." And then in the movie, it's filled with monkeys. There were no monkeys that day though.
No monkeys.
They might have been hiding when you walked by.
I have to note that this movie was directed by Matt Reeves, who was the co-creator of a show I unironically love, Felicity, with J.J. Abrams. Which I really want someone to start re-promoting Felicity with, from the director of Star Wars: The Force Awakens and Dawn of the Planet of the Apes.
I'm doing
Felicity.
Yeah, I'm totally. Yeah.
It all starts there, man. Felicity.
We, Eric, a lot of people sort of thought maybe we've been in a golden age of television for a long time, and like Breaking Bad's over, some of the best shows are concluding, maybe it's ending. But again, 2014, we're going to talk about a couple of shows, but first up is True Detective on HBO.
Yeah.
So good. And True Detective, we were coming off of, this golden age of television and a lot of great shows, and also that divide between movie star and TV star was already starting to dissipate.
Yep.
But to still have these two guys, especially McConaughey, who was about to have this amazing year, for him at this point of his career to be like, yeah, I'm going to do this HBO thing, got a lot of people's attention. And then it was such a great show. I mean, you have to give credit to American Horror Story for sort of establishing this idea of the anthology, the yearly anthology.
Yeah, it's just the best thing.
Yeah. But True Detective obviously embraced it, got people who they could not get, McConaughey wasn't going to sign on to 7 years of True Detective. And then that first year is so compelling, grabs you so quickly.
Yeah, the incredible magical realism that exists throughout it. The fact that it's terrifying at times, like when they go to the what was that place called? The scary stick fortress.
We don't talk about that.
We don't talk the scary. That place is terrible. I watched that episode. I'm like, I don't feel
that was
good
legitimately
here.
a terrifying scene. I mean, that's a bad place to be. I think that like television for a long time was a very interesting and special medium to tell a story. But we did get so many shows go out and spiral into 22 episode seasons, 15 seasons of that. Like there's shows like Dexter and Californication that maybe overstay their welcome by a few years. I feel a little of that with Walking Dead right now, but I think there was something special about True Detective coming out and being 6 episodes, 8 episodes or something like that, and being able to tell them a story comparable to something you'd tell in a movie, but in a better way, being able to flesh it out. And there are shows that I can watch where I'm just kind of like on my laptop or on my phone or I'm playing my DS and it's on in the background. But True Detective was a show where I hung on to every
it
movie.
commands your full attention at all times. I think a lot of shows play at having characters that are like, oh, Tony Soprano is a bad guy, but you still root for him. But in this show, it left me really, it stuck with me. I'm like, man, these cops are corrupt. Like they're bad guys, but then they solve the crime. Like they do good things.
They're bad people.
They are bad people. But I don't know. Like I kind of don't know what to. Like it left me with like a lot of like I was like, huh. Yeah. In a way that not a lot of TV does.
And Russ Cole is a character that could have really gone off the rails if it wasn't for the writing and McConaughey's performance nailing it. Because he's saying these sort of ridiculous things, philosophical things, but he was so committed to the performance. Yeah. And they used Harrelson really well to be sort of the guy who's like, you're crazy. Like that's a problem the second season
is not a flat circle.
Yeah. Second season, it kind of felt like everyone was talking like Russ Cole. But that first season really nailed what is, on its surface, a buddy cop dynamic, but still making it feel really good.
It was also Harrelson arguably being the better cop of the two, but Rust just, I don't know, like their interaction, like they form like two halves of this, like the two of them put together are this incredible like crime fighting duo, but then individually they're kind of like not complete.
They're both broken human beings.
They're not a yin yang by any means. They're just kind of a bunch of shattered shapes on the floor. I do appreciate the way the story was told over multiple time periods as well, and having that sort of never really bounce in a way that felt difficult to keep up with. But watching these characters change throughout the years, sometimes for better or worse. I mean, Russ was pretty much always down with making stick men out of beer cans and stuff like that.
But we should also mention how good the direction was. Because TV is not a director's medium usually. But I'm going to massacre his name, Cary Fukunaga. He did such a great job, and he, notably did not come back for season 2. But the whole thing, it was all completely riveting. And then, of course, the end of episode 4
that 10-minute shot.
That shot. It was amazing. And really, for him, I think was not that he hadn't done some other stuff before, but really made a huge statement for him as a director that is someone to watch going forward. I'm so sad he's not doing it because I love that book.
Oh, my God.
But so it really, in TV, where it's kind of harder to stand out as a director or true detective.
Eric, we also have to talk about Fargo made its debut. And again, and I sort of, like a lot of stuff we're talking about on this episode, against all odds, turned out to be incredibly impressive.
It's like you go into these, again, it's almost like a Lego movie and Fargo comparisons aren't done. But going to Fargo, look, you're going to get cynicism anyway because it's, you're making a great movie, you're trying to make it a TV show, we've seen a lot of those go bad. And then the Coen brothers, because their voice is so distinctive.
It's like, don't touch this.
Don't try to be the Coen brothers. And then, this show, I mean, we should mention that they are technically executive producers, but they're not really creatively involved. They kind of, they did give it their blessing, though. But Fargo, it nailed it. I mean, it nailed, it's not the Coens, and yet Noah Hawley, who's the showrunner, managed to completely get the vibe of that movie, the feel of it, while making a great show in its own right that if you haven't seen the movie, it completely works.
Well, like the thing, I was so skeptical, like because Fargo's not on HBO, or something like that, I'm like, man, how in the world is this going to work? But it turns out to totally not, it's a non-issue. It's just great storytelling, great characters.
And it's not, it almost feels like an anthology with season 2. Like obviously there are the links, like this is the same character who's in season 1. But it is still, you can watch it on its, you can watch season 2 on its own and totally enjoy it. And unlike True Detective, the second season of Fargo is incredible.
I mean, I also appreciated like the little nods to the film. Like they're very There's sometimes they're blatant, sometimes they're subtle, but they work and they don't detract from the original film or retroactively make that movie worse. And they don't make it required viewing for the TV show as well. I think it's like we're getting into this weird era where maybe we shouldn't be skeptical about things as much as we used to be. Like maybe tie-ins to things like that are now just generally of a better quality. I'm sure a slew of bad things will come out to prove us wrong.
It's just crazy, like Fargo is a weird movie and this is a weird show, and yet it totally works and fires on all cylinders, and I don't know, it's kind of interesting in that way. And I also feel like it's another one that its esteem has grown over time, actually, which is fantastic to see that sort of, when you're putting on a masterclass in storytelling, to see that rewarded in a way that, even 4 or 5 years ago, you would just see great shows get canceled all the time.
Oh, totally.
And you still do, to be fair, but like it's great to see Fargo find an audience.
I mean, I think you do have to give credit to FX, who I think it's so easy to like HBO and Netflix kind of make splashy shows, but FX has done a lot of cool shows too, a lot of very interesting shows and stuff like The Americans and Justified, and they take risks. Fargo completely, it completely worked when maybe it shouldn't have. I also love the nods to the movie that sometimes are just kind of homages, and then there was that one direct plot point that we didn't know going in. They were kind of being cagey if it was directly tied in. It turned out it was, and in a way that you don't have to have seen the movie, but it's very cool if you have.
If you have, it's sort of like it's just a little extra layer of joy you get.
You go,
right. Oh man, that's great.
And that first season, Malvo.
Oh my God, seriously. The casting in this is like one of the things I love, and I'm like, why are Martin Freeman and Billy Bob Thornton?
Right.
But then with season 2, it's like, well, yep, sure, like Nick Offerman, throw a Culkin in there, I don't care. Yeah,
and a lot of the first season plays with all these very hated, unlikable characters that you still love to watch their lives deteriorate in front of them as they consistently make worse and worse decisions in their own hands to just spread out damage to everything they can touch. And you're sitting there going like, oh man, this is great. I just love watching these suffer.
But then it's also like, we are only halfway through, so I don't know where we're going to go from here.
A lot of the cool thing about Fargo, especially that first season, is about sort of like what people kind of take away on the surface and how Martin Freeman's character seems like a nice enough guy, but he's got this real darkness inside him that just grows and grows and grows. Versus Molly, Alison Tolman, who was awesome, kind of a great discovery, who everyone kind of overlooks and no one's really paying attention to, but she's the smartest one there. And she's noticing all these clues that no one else is. And so I really like how they kind of take that idea of maybe you shouldn't judge this person on their surface, except for Malvo, because he seems really creepy and scary.
And he is really creepy.
He's just straight
pretty
up
much the
evil.
devil.
So, I mean, there was a lot of other awesome stuff in 2014, but unfortunately we are out of time. And
No, I just that's my shock that we're out of time.
we're going for another 40 minutes. No, I mean, this is actually sort of an interesting moment because this is it. This has been the history of Awesome.
The history of Awesome is over.
Yeah, Awesome is done.
Altano, it's interesting to have you on this episode because you were in the room. It was actually your idea almost 2 years ago.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
And it just started with like...
Sorry for giving you all this work to do.
Yeah, I know. That's what I was going to say, is it started with just blurting out a sentence, let's do like a history of pop culture and all the awesome stuff that happened every year. Everyone said, that's great. And then like, oh crap.
And then you had to make it. Yeah. Well, Justin and I have good news. The curse of Awesome has been lifted.
No, I mean, there's also, I have been sort of project managing this, but like, Sean Finnegan, Esmeralda Portillo, like just lots and lots of help from lots of people. And obviously all the panelists and having people come in from different offices. It's been probably the most fun and gratifying thing that I've worked on in my time in IGN. It's been going on. I have a history of Awesome spreadsheet that I have not closed in probably almost 2 years. That just
probably
tracks.
just close your browser.
And so now,
open
like
back up.
we did it. I get to close the spreadsheet and
That's
then
right.
open another one.
Dare you say
sad.
the experience was awesome?
It was an incredibly awesome experience. Everyone, if this is the first episode you've watched or you've been following with us for all 38, I hope you enjoyed
38.
sort of watching them as much as we have. I learned so much about the 70s, 80s, 90s, and even 2000s stuff that I'd just forgotten and didn't remember. And I hope you did too. So everybody, this has been the History of Awesome 2014.
We did it.